ahead, and then I'll come back to the front. Yeah. Yeah, go, it's working.
Hi, I'm Satyaru. I'm co-founder and president of KC.
Yes.
We're a company which works with small farmers, and that word small, we don't want it to be a sign of weakness, but we want that to be a sign of strength. So we work on increasing incomes of smallholder farmers in India. The one thing, out of what you said just now, listening to the customers, so that's something on which we actually built our company. So based on hundreds and thousands of farmer conversations. Yes. So one thing which I always wrestle with is, right now we are a reasonably small team, but as we build the team and as we grow large, how do we really hold the culture intact in the company of farmer first, right, and customer first? So how do you really hold that? And is it really important that everybody in the company has to actually echo with the ethos on which the company is actually built?
So the answer is yes and yes. Next question. A couple of thoughts. First is just joking. The market you're after, the majority of jobs, in fact all jobs of the future, will be created in small business. And so the individual farmer, the individual startups, etc., will be where total job creation occurs. Big companies, I hope I'm wrong, there'll be some that grow, but for everyone that grows, there are others going to be shrinking. So I actually like what you call the commercial marketplace, the small marketplace. It's often one that the big players also ignore at their own peril. In terms of what is your role as CEO, I think you have 4 things to do, and culture is one of them. First is vision and strategy for the company. You've got to own that. Second is your management team. Develop, recruit, retain, and at the right time, unfortunately, change that leadership team so that you can scale. Third is culture, and that's the one that many companies underestimate, especially early on. And your 4th role is you've got to be good at communications. And what's the most important form of communications? Listening, exactly. And how you do that remotely and how you use social media to listen. So I believe culture is one of the most important things that you do as a CEO. I've never seen a great company without a great culture. You may not like the culture of a Microsoft or a Amazon or an Oracle or a Cisco, but every great company has an unbelievably strong culture. You've got to own that as a CEO. It's got to be your culture, and you've got to develop it in ways the market sees and your employees see. That's how you keep your consistency as you scale. Because if the CEO stops interviewing people as you get to 100 or 200 people, which often happens, or instead of you putting each interview through 10 interviews, you only put them through 2, and not including you, and you don't really check on the culture and you don't back channel the person to see what they're really like, how often do you find out something really important when you call a reference that somebody gave you? I mean, if you get a bad reference, that person's an idiot. So by definition, the people they gave you as references are going to be good. You've got to see how do you back channel it. The culture, I think, is what has made Cisco great. You may like our culture or not. We have no fear. We love to take on the giants, and we've never been beaten. I mean, never. We're not over arrogant, but we say, how do we out execute them? How we get the market transitions right? How we integrate products? How do we have a culture that will do almost anything for our customers or our people? I'm aware of every illness in the company that is life-threatening of every employee, their spouse, or their children with their form like no one else. And 75,000 people.
How do you do that?
You develop a replicatable process where it automatically comes to me, but also each of our leaders kick in to say, we're going to be there to help you. And there isn't a day to go by that I don't help get a person to see a doctor, or to say we've got a situation with a young child that we really don't think is getting taken care of here. How do we do it differently? And sometimes it's also just being there when really tough things happen. Same thing with customers. I'm a product of customer satisfaction first, second, and third. And so I've really focused on the customer being happy when they're not. I want to know about it. Guess what? As CEO or chairman, if I paid attention to it, everybody in the company paid attention to it because they knew I'd be after it the next day. So back to culture, it's really important to do. It's fun watching Umesh as an example at Unifor develop the culture there, which I don't know for sure, but you might not have put it as high on the list when we first started talking about 18 months ago as you do today. But culture is very important to every successful company. It's also what allows you to scale and keep that hunger, that focus, the culture that you want.
Yeah, just to quote Satya Nadella, I mean, he says the C in the CEO stands for the custodian of culture, so I think that's the point that John was making as well. More questions. Yes, you have the microphone. Go ahead.
Hello. Hello, John. So, yeah, from the incubations perspective, because I'm from T-Hub, instead of asking several specific questions because I deal with many startups, I'll ask one general question. Do you think NFV, SDN, and Open Telco will spur the growth of many startups?
So I think open standards and the transition to more and more software that runs across multiple networks will absolutely spur the growth of key startups. Then what we had to do at Cisco was to understand what did we really like about that and what did our customers like about it, and then we had to execute. Not the model of the startup, but how you combine that with custom ASICs, which is really software into ASICs at a speed that others cannot match. And so I tend to think of what is a customer trying to solve, the openness, etc., then you blend in security. But I think in terms of the openness, that is here to stay.
Okay. Openness here to stay. Quick, yes, you've got the mic. Go ahead.
Hi, John. Thanks for being with us today. I'm Raj, co-founder at Banyan Nation. We are a recycling and a waste management startup, a T-Hub startup. We're known for our work in closed-loop recycling of plastics, especially working with the likes of Tata Motors on India's first bumper-to-bumper recycling, and also with the global luxury giant L'Oreal on a bottle-to-bottle recycling, a very first for India.
Yes.
What we also do is we work very actively with cities, especially the state of Telangana, to roll out a smart waste IoT platform. Again, at first it's a data intelligence platform to solve the intractable problem of waste. With the emergence of smart cities and with IoT, and you being really bullish about India, how do you see a tiny startup like ours be part of, say, a Cisco city data platform and effectively work with government to build a business that's actually scalable and sustainable?
Yeah.
So almost ending with your last question going forward, one of the things, and we talked earlier about France and the changes that they'd made in France, was their large businesses and their governments would not do business with startups because they knew a certain amount of startups would fail, and that would make the business leader or the government leader look bad. That culture has to change. Same here is true in India. And so I was just with the Secretary of Telecommunications, Andrea. She's amazing. She understands that one of the roles for this really to go big in telecom is to create an environment where startups can use this huge network you're building across India, and in terms of the direction on how you go forward on it. So the ability really to think about how a startup plays a key role in these companies is key. Will large companies partner with a startup? How many of you say yes? How many of you say no?
Well, the room says yes.
I say no.
You say no?
Large companies will work with a startup, but for somebody to partner with you, you've got to move the needle in a big way that affects their top line and bottom line. Otherwise, when that sponsor who got excited about you in a given department or in the CIO or even the president, when they move on, they'll lose the interest. So when you work with large companies, understand that it's going to be a tactical partnership with maybe just a few exceptions, where you might have something so unique to what that customer needs on security, or so unique on what that customer needs for the environment and recycling plastics, that they'll do more. So as you enter it, you want to enter it tactically. Then you've got to say, where do I fit into this portfolio? Using Cisco, for example, in smart cities. What we do on smart cities is we don't focus on waste or traffic or security or startups or lighting, etc. We combine all of these in terms of architectures and focus on outcome, which means to do a smart city in India, the individual chief minister who has responsibility for the city, she or he has to say, how I bring these services to light. Because lots of what's happening now on the networks is that the networks are getting loaded, but they aren't loaded with things that people can really use to make decisions on. So we've got to bring this startup engine to light using the largest service provider telecom environment going to be built out, and with not 5 or 6 smart cities at one time like is occurring in France, but perhaps 20 to 100 to 748,000 villages. So I'd partner with the right companies. Cisco, I think, is a great selection. I'm a little bit biased there, and the right smart cities where they will work with you, but not literally have you doing work that you're never going to get paid for, and end up, you can get very, very much of your resource absorbed by a large company if you're not careful. So think of a large company as a tactical partner, or most likely just a customer. But you treat them good in the process.